The soft glow of evening light filtered through the windows of Adelaide Cottage as Prince William made his way up the wooden staircase. His footsteps were gentle but purposeful, each one bringing him closer to what he considered the most precious moment of his day. In the kitchen below, Catherine had just finished tidying up after dinner, the sounds of plates being put away creating a familiar domestic symphony that filled their Windsor home with warmth. William paused at the top of the stairs, listening to the cheerful chatter coming from the children's bedrooms. George, Charlotte, and Louis were preparing for bed, their voices carrying the excitement of another day lived to its fullest. The prince smiled to himself, remembering how his own mother, Diana, had made bedtime such a special time for him and Harry. Those memories, golden and bittersweet, had shaped the father he had become. As he approached George's room first, William could hear his eldest son organizing his things for school the next day. At 10 years old, George was becoming more independent, but he still looked forward to these nightly visits from his father. William knocked gently on the doorframe, and George's face lit up when he saw him. "Ready for our chat?" William asked, sitting on the edge of George's bed. The boy nodded eagerly, setting aside the book he had been reading about ancient Egypt. This was their time, a sacred few minutes that belonged to just them. William took his son's hand, looking into eyes that reminded him so much of his own at that age. "George," he began, his voice soft but clear, "do you know what makes you special?" The boy shrugged, a shy smile playing on his lips. William continued, "It's not because you're a prince, or because of our family name. It's because of who you are inside, your kindness, your curiosity, the way you look after Charlotte and Louis." George listened intently as his father spoke about the day's small victories, how he had helped a younger student at school, how he had shared his lunch with a friend who had forgotten theirs. "These things matter, George. Every act of kindness creates a ripple that touches lives in ways we might never see." The tradition had started years ago, when George was just 4. William had been struggling with how to help his children understand their unique position in the world while ensuring they remained grounded and compassionate. One night, as he tucked George into bed, he had spontaneously started talking about the importance of being kind. The words had flowed naturally, and George had listened with such attention that William knew he had found something special. "Dad," George said quietly, "sometimes at school, people treat me differently. They're either too friendly or they stay away. It's hard to know who really wants to be my friend." William's heart ached for his son. He understood this struggle all too well. "I know, my brave boy. I felt the same way when I was your age. But here's what I learned. True friends are the ones who see you for who you are, not what you are. Keep being yourself, keep being kind, and the right people will find their way to you." They talked for a few more minutes about school, about George's interest in environmental conservation, and about the football match he was looking forward to on the weekend. Before leaving, William pulled his son into a warm embrace. "Remember, George, you have the power to make someone's day better just by being you. Use that power wisely." Moving down the hallway, William could hear Charlotte singing softly to herself. At 8 years old, she had inherited her mother's grace and her great-grandmother's strength of character. He found her brushing her long hair, already in her favorite pajamas decorated with tiny horses. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, setting down her brush and running to him. William caught her in his arms, spinning her once before settling into the comfortable armchair in her room. Charlotte climbed onto his lap, a position she insisted she wasn't too old for yet. "My darling Charlotte," William began, stroking her hair gently, "shall I tell you about a very special princess I know?" Charlotte nodded enthusiastically, though she knew he meant her. "This princess has a superpower. Do you know what it is?" "What?" Charlotte asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. She has the ability to make people feel better just by being near them. Today I heard from your teacher that you sat with Emma when she was sad about her grandmother being ill. You didn't have to say much, but you were there. That's a gift, Charlotte. Charlotte's face grew serious. Emma was really sad, Daddy. I remembered when I felt sad about Gangan and how Mummy held my hand, so I held Emma's hand. William felt a surge of pride. That's exactly right, my love. Sometimes the best thing we can do is simply be present for someone. You showed Emma that she wasn't alone, and that matters more than you know. They continued talking about Charlotte's day, her art project, the new song she was learning on the piano, and her plans to organize a charity bake sale at school. William marveled at her compassion and initiative, traits that seemed to grow stronger each day. Charlotte, he said, his voice taking on a more serious but loving tone. You're growing up in a world that will watch you closely. Some people will have opinions about everything you do, but I want you to remember something. The only opinion that truly matters is the one you have of yourself when you look in the mirror each night. Are you proud of how you treated others? Did you stay true to your values? If you can answer yes to these questions, then you've had a good day. Charlotte hugged him tightly. I love you, Daddy. Will you tell me more about Granny Diana tomorrow? I like hearing about her. Of course, my darling. She would have been so proud of you. William kissed her forehead and tucked her in, making sure her favorite stuffed horse was within reach. Finally, William made his way to Louis's room. At 5 years old, Louis was a bundle of energy even at bedtime. He was attempting to build a fort with his pillows when William entered, his face flushed with excitement. Daddy, look! I made a castle! Louis announced proudly, gesturing to his creation. What a magnificent castle! William agreed, helping to steady a precariously balanced pillow. Is there room for a king in this castle? Yes. You can be the king, and I'll be the knight, Louis declared, pulling his father onto the bed beside him. After a few minutes of gentle play, William managed to calm Louis down enough for their nightly talk. With his youngest son curled up beside him, William began the ritual that had become so important to their family. Louis, my little knight, do you know what the bravest thing in the world is? Louis thought hard, his forehead wrinkling in concentration. Fighting dragons? William chuckled softly. That would be very brave, but I think the bravest thing is being kind when others aren't, helping when it's not easy, and standing up for what's right even when you're scared. Like when I shared my biscuit with James, even though he wasn't nice to me? Louis asked, remembering an incident from nursery school. Exactly like that, William affirmed. You showed that your heart is stronger than any hurt feelings. That's real courage. Louis. As William continued talking with each child, he wove in lessons from his own life, adapted for their understanding. He spoke of his work with homeless charities, explaining in simple terms how everyone deserves dignity and respect. He talked about his environmental initiatives, helping them understand their responsibility to protect the planet. Most importantly, he shared stories of everyday heroes, teachers, doctors, volunteers, who made the world better through their actions. Catherine stood quietly in the hallway, listening to her husband's gentle voice drifting from Louis's room. She never tired of witnessing these moments, understanding how much they meant to both William and their children. Her own childhood had been filled with love and stability, but she recognized that William was giving their children something he had lost too soon: consistent, present, emotionally available fatherhood. The nightly messages had evolved over the years, adapting to each child's personality and needs. William had an intuitive understanding of what each child needed to hear. For George, who felt the weight of future responsibility even at his young age, the messages focused on staying true to himself. For Charlotte, who possessed natural empathy but sometimes worried about pleasing everyone, William emphasized the importance of boundaries and self-respect. For Lewis, still so young and free-spirited, the messages centered on kindness as strength and the joy of helping others. Inside Lewis's room, William was finishing his talk with his youngest son. "Do you know what Granny Diana used to tell me and Uncle Harry?" he asked. Louis shook his head, always eager for stories about the grandmother he never met. "She said that everyone is fighting battles we know nothing about, so we should always choose kindness. Even when someone seems grumpy or mean, they might just be having a really hard day." "Like when our gardener was sad because his dog was sick?" Louis asked, demonstrating the remarkable way children could grasp complex emotional concepts. "Exactly like that," William confirmed. "You brought him that picture you drew of his dog, remember? That small act of kindness meant the world to him." These conversations were never scripted or planned. William let them flow naturally, responding to each child's mood and the events of their day. Some nights, the messages were brief, simple reminders of love and pride. Other nights, like this one, they delved deeper into life lessons and values. The tradition had taken on even more significance after the children had begun to understand their unique position in society. William remembered the day George had come home from school, confused and upset because a classmate had said he was different and would never have a normal life. That night's message had been particularly important. William had sat with George for almost an hour, explaining that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was an opportunity to make a unique positive impact. He shared stories of his own childhood struggles with identity and belonging, and how he had learned to see his position as a platform for good rather than a burden. "Every person is different in their own way," William had told George. "Some people are different because of their talents, some because of their challenges, some because of their circumstances. What matters is what we do with our differences. We can let them isolate us, or we can use them to connect with and help others." The impact of these nightly messages extended far beyond bedtime. Teachers at the children's schools had noticed and commented on their emotional intelligence and kindness. George had started a peer support group at his school, Charlotte had organized fundraisers for various charities, and even little Louis was known for his thoughtful gestures toward classmates and teachers. William rose from Louis's bed, tucking the blankets around his youngest son. "Sleep tight, my brave knight. Tomorrow is a new day to spread kindness." "Daddy," Louis called out as William reached the door, "will you tell me I'm special tomorrow night too?" "Every night for as long as you want me to," William promised, his voice thick with emotion. As he closed Louis's door gently, William found Catherine waiting in the hallway. She slipped her hand into his, and they stood together in the quiet corridor, listening to the peaceful sounds of their children settling into sleep. "You're wonderful with them," Catherine whispered. "The way you speak to each one, understanding exactly what they need to hear, it's a gift, William." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I learned from the best," he said softly. "My mother showed me the importance of emotional connection with children. She made Harry and I feel heard and valued, not just as princes, but as individuals. I want our children to have that consistently, to never doubt that they are loved for who they are." They made their way to their own bedroom, where William shared with Catherine the conversations he'd had with each child. This was part of their routine, too, ensuring they were both aware of any concerns or triumphs in their children's lives. "George is struggling with friendships again," William noted. "I think the media attention after the coronation has made some of his classmates act differently around him." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "I've noticed that too. Perhaps we should arrange some play dates with the children of friends we trust, give him a chance to just be a boy without the weight of expectations." They discussed strategies for supporting each child, their partnership in parenting as strong as their partnership in life. William's nightly messages were just one part of their approach to raising grounded, compassionate children despite the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. The tradition had also helped William process his own emotions and experiences. Speaking to his children about kindness, courage, and integrity forced him to examine these qualities in himself. There were nights when he would plan to share one message but find himself guided to another based on his own reflections from the day. One evening, after a particularly challenging day of royal duties where he had met with families affected by tragedy, William had found himself telling Charlotte about the importance of bearing witness to others' pain. "Sometimes," he had said, "the most important thing we can do is simply acknowledge that someone's suffering matters. We can't always fix things, but we can always show that we care." Charlotte had absorbed this lesson deeply, later applying it when a friend's parent was diagnosed with cancer. Instead of avoiding her friend or offering hollow reassurances, 8-year-old Charlotte had simply said, "This must be really scary for you. I'm here if you want to talk, or if you just want to play and forget about it for a while." The ripple effects of William's nightly messages extended beyond his own children. George, Charlotte, and Louis often shared their father's wisdom with friends, creating a wider circle of kindness and emotional intelligence. Teachers had begun incorporating similar reflection times in their classrooms, inspired by the children's emotional maturity. William had also begun to weave in stories about their mother's work, helping the children understand Catherine's initiatives around early childhood development and mental health. He wanted them to see both their parents as people dedicated to service, not just as royals fulfilling obligations. "Mummy spent her day with scientists learning about how baby brains grow," he might say. "She's working to make sure all children get the best start in life. Isn't it amazing how she uses her position to help others?" These messages served multiple purposes. They reinforced values, celebrated their mother's work, and showed the children that privilege came with responsibility to serve others. William was careful to make this feel inspiring rather than burdensome, emphasizing the joy and fulfillment that came from helping others. The night routine had become so embedded in their family life that even when William traveled for official duties, he would call at bedtime to share his message. The children would gather around Catherine's phone, eager to hear their father's voice. On particularly long trips, he would record messages for Catherine to play, ensuring the tradition continued unbroken. Daddy's messages, as the children called them, had become a source of strength during difficult times. When Prince Philip had passed away, William had used their nightly talks to help the children process grief. When media scrutiny intensified, the messages reminded them of their intrinsic worth beyond public perception. One particularly meaningful evening arrived during a week when the family had faced intense public scrutiny. Photographs of the children had been published without permission, and social media had been buzzing with commentary about their appearance, behavior, and future roles. William knew his children had overheard some conversations and seen worried expressions on the adults around them. That night, he gathered all 3 children in George's room, something he did only on special occasions. They sat in a circle on the floor, the formality of their public lives forgotten in this intimate family moment. Catherine joined them, creating a complete family circle. "I want to share something important with all of you tonight," William began, his voice carrying the weight of personal experience. "There will be times in your lives when the world feels very loud, when everyone seems to have an opinion about who you are and what you should do. During those times, I want you to remember this circle right here." He looked at each child in turn, ensuring he had their complete attention. "This circle, our family, is your truth. The love we have for each other, the values we share, the laughter and tears we experience together. This is what's real. Everything else is just noise." George, mature beyond his years, asked quietly, "But Dad, how do we ignore it when everyone is watching and talking?" William smiled gently at his eldest son. "You don't ignore it entirely, George. That would be impossible. Instead, you acknowledge it exists, but choose not to let it define you. Think of it like weather. You can't control if it rains, but you can choose to dance in the rain or wait it out inside. The weather doesn't change who you are. Charlotte, always practical, added, like when Sophie said my dress was ugly at the garden party, and I decided her opinion didn't matter because I loved my dress. Exactly like that, my darling, Catherine interjected, proud of her daughter's resilience. You chose to trust your own feelings over someone else's harsh words. Louis, not wanting to be left out, piped up, I don't care what people say. I'm going to be a motorcycle racer. His declaration brought laughter from the family, lightening the mood while perfectly illustrating the point about staying true to oneself. William continued, sharing a story from his own childhood that he rarely discussed. When I was about George's age, I struggled terribly with being in the public eye. I was shy and all the attention made me want to hide. Granny Diana noticed this, and one night, much like tonight, she sat with Harry and me and told us something I've never forgotten. The children leaned in, always eager for stories about their grandmother. William's voice softened with memory. She said, My darling boys, you cannot control the spotlight, but you can control what you do while standing in it. Use that light to illuminate goodness in the world. Show people kindness, compassion, and service. Make the spotlight mean something. Is that why you and Mummy do so much charity work? George asked, beginning to understand the deeper connections between their family's position and purpose. That's exactly why, William confirmed. Every engagement, every charity visit, every initiative, it's all about using our position to highlight important causes and help others. The attention isn't comfortable, but if it helps someone in need, then it serves a purpose. The family spent the next hour sharing stories and discussing how to handle various situations they might face. William and Catherine were honest about the challenges while emphasizing the opportunities to make a positive difference. They role-played scenarios with Louis making everyone laugh by dramatically declaring he would tell any mean photographers to go take pictures of flowers instead because they're prettier than me anyway. As the evening drew to a close, William introduced a new element to their nightly tradition. I want to give each of you something, he said, pulling out 3 small leather journals. These are your kindness journals. Each night after our talk, I want you to write or draw one kind thing you did that day and one kind thing someone did for you. Over time, you'll see how kindness creates beautiful patterns in our lives. Charlotte immediately hugged her journal to her chest, already planning her first entry. George examined his thoughtfully, appreciating the grown-up nature of the gift. Louis immediately began drawing what appeared to be a stick figure sharing a very large cookie. The journals became treasured possessions, filled not just with daily kindnesses, but with reflections, worries, hopes, and dreams. William would occasionally ask to see them, using the entries as starting points for deeper conversations about empathy, justice, and personal growth. Months passed, and the nightly messages continued to evolve with the children's growing understanding of the world. William began incorporating more complex themes, discussing privilege and responsibility with George, exploring leadership and voice with Charlotte, and nurturing Louis's natural inclination toward joy and generosity. One evening, George surprised William by asking if he could share a message of his own. Standing awkwardly but determinedly by his bed, the 10-year-old cleared his throat and began. Dad, you always tell us about being kind and strong and true to ourselves, but I want to tell you something too. Watching you and Mom show us how to live with purpose even when it's hard, that teaches us more than any words could. When I see you come home tired from a long day but still make time for our messages, or when Mom advocates for children's mental health even when people criticize her, I understand what you mean about using our position for good. William felt tears prick his eyes as George continued. I know I'll be king one day, and that's scary sometimes. But if I can be half the man and father you are, if I can make people feel heard and valued like you do, then maybe I'll be okay at it." Unable to speak for a moment, William pulled his son into a fierce embrace. "You're already more than okay, George. You're extraordinary, not because of what you'll become, but because of who you are right now." Charlotte and Louis, who had been listening from the doorway, ran in to join the embrace. Catherine appeared moments later, drawn by the emotional moment, and the family stood together in a tight circle of love and understanding. The tradition of nightly messages had become more than William had ever imagined when he started it years ago. It had become a cornerstone of their family life, a daily practice of intentional parenting that honored both the children's individual spirits and their collective bond. As the years progressed, the messages adapted, but never ceased. Even as the children grew older and their schedules became more complex, they protected this time. George, entering his teenage years, might roll his eyes at the mushiness of it all, but he never missed a night when his father was home. Charlotte began sharing her own insights, often teaching William as much as he taught her. Louis maintained his exuberant approach to the tradition, sometimes turning the messages into elaborate adventure stories that somehow always circled back to kindness and courage. William often reflected on how these nightly conversations had shaped not just his children, but himself. Being intentional about imparting values and wisdom had forced him to live those values more consciously. He couldn't speak to his children about kindness and then be dismissive to his staff. He couldn't encourage them to stand up for others while remaining silent on important issues. The messages had also helped him process his own grief and trauma in healthier ways. Speaking to his children about their grandmother allowed him to remember Diana's best qualities without being overwhelmed by loss. Discussing resilience with them helped him build his own. Teaching them about service reinforced his own commitment to using his position meaningfully. One night, after a particularly moving conversation with Charlotte about finding her voice in a world that often tried to speak for her, William found an old letter from his mother. In it, she had written about her hopes for him and Harry, that they would grow up to be kind, compassionate men who understood that true nobility came from service to others. Reading those words, William realized that the nightly messages were his way of fulfilling his mother's hopes while adapting her legacy for a new generation. He was taking the love and wisdom she had given him in their too brief time together and expanding it into years of consistent, present parenting. The sweet nightly messages had become a bridge between past and future, honoring Diana's memory while preparing George, Charlotte, and Louis for lives of purpose and service. They were conversations that acknowledged the unique challenges of royal life while emphasizing the universal values of kindness, integrity, and love. As William completed his rounds that night, checking on each sleeping child one final time, he whispered the same words to each of them, words that had become his own nightly ritual. "You are loved, you are valuable, and you have the power to make the world brighter just by being in it." These simple words, repeated night after night, had become the foundation upon which three young royals were building their understanding of themselves and their place in the world. They were words that would echo through years and generations, a father's love transformed into a legacy of compassion and purpose. In the quiet of Adelaide Cottage, with his children sleeping peacefully and Catherine by his side, William understood that these nightly messages were perhaps his most important royal duty, raising children who would lead not just with their titles, but with their hearts. The sweet tradition would continue, evolving and adapting but never ending, a testament to the enduring power of a parent's love and intention in shaping the leaders and humans of tomorrow.